I hope you're all prepared for this one. The origins of King Solomon Temple. Be ready to listen to the biggest secret from the great magician, King Solomon. So for ceremonial magical practitioners, it's hard to avoid in our journey to stumble into a figure as Solomon, whether it's through Goetia or Kabbalah, and its center point legend which refers to its temple. So talking about the temple, I believe, should be a must between occult fanatics. The temple itself, according to the description of the Bible, was a building oriented to the east direction. The building must have had an interior length of approximately 27 meters, 9 meters wide, and a height of also 3.5. Since I am a more visual person, I purchased a Solomon Temple model that helped me understand better its distribution, since in some rituals, the symbolism of the columns, number of steps on each stairs, chambers, and their location are part of the initiatic journey. Throughout the video, I might come back to this. And by the way, I found this model on a Christian bookstore, so never disregard a place. You never know what you might find there. And by the way, yes, I have a Doctor Strange figure, 3.75 inch, and an Ark of a Covenant. So back to the temple. The temple dimensions were comparable of those of a chapel, but the call usually took place from the outside, or either side of the entrance of the temple, were erected two columns called Hakim and Boaz. The priests and kings entered the temple through a large gold-plated gate approximately of 10 meters high and 4 meters wide. Behind that door were three enclosures. The first of these enclosures was called Hegal, or Santu, holy place of the sanctuary, which was illuminated through high windows. The third chamber, named David or Kodesh HaKodashim, was the holy side of the Temple of Solomon. In Latin, it is known as the Sanctum Sanctorum. The enclosure was a high level than the Hegal and only could be accessed by a climbing ladder. The David was shaped like a cube of approximately 10 meters, and in its center was the Ark of the Covenant. The large chest, made of acacia wood, covered with gold plates and with 4 rings to the corners, where eventually they put rods to transport it. Much has been written about Solomon's temple and little is really known about it. But we know that there were several temples in Israel. The first was the one and only built by King Solomon 3,000 years ago. The next one never existed in stone, was seen by the prophet Ezekiel in a vision. The third was built by King Zerubbabel in the early 6th century BC, after the Jews returned from their Babylonian captivity. And the last temple was erected by Herodes in the time of Jesus Christ and destroyed by the Romans. As Solomon pursued the task of creating great constructions, including a temple to house God, from this temple built by Solomon there are no architectural or archaeological records, so it is understood by most that it is a symbolic temple. However, J.R. Clark, in his book A New Look at King Solomon Temple and its connection with Masonic ritual, and other experts such as Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas consider his style, size, and arrangement that are almost a carbon copy of the Sumerian temple erected for the god Ninurta 1,000 years earlier. But who was Ninurta? According to Zacharias Sitchin on his book The 12th Planet, he was the son and legal successor of Enlil, youngest of the gods on earth, who had been born in the heavens. Ninurta's old depictions show him holding a unique weapon, No doubt he could fire rays of light. Ancient texts hailed him as a powerful hunter, a fighting god famous for his martial arts. Regarding the temple of Ninurta about 2 millennia earlier, when the Sumerian ruler Gudea commemorated the construction of the temple of his god, said that Ninurta, he wrote, was a man who came from heaven and appeared to him. And because he had a helmet on his head, he was a god. When Ninurta and two divine companions appeared to Gudea, they stood next to Ninurta's black bird of the divine wind. In the end, it turned out that the main purpose of the construction of the temple was to provide a safe zone or a special enclosure within the temple grounds for his divine bird. Gudea recounted that for the construction of the enclosure, he received divine help, since huge beams and gigantic stones were brought from far away and were needed, and the construction of the temple was terminated only after the divine bird entered the enclosure. The similarities between biblical and Sumerian descriptions of both vehicles and beings are obvious. The description of vehicles as a bird, a windbird, and a whirlwind that could rise to the sky while displaying a glow leaves no doubt that there was some kind of flying machine. Ezekiel, who had the vision of the second temple according to the old text, describes seeing a celestial chariot. He lived among the Jewish deportees on the banks of the Kabul River in the northern Mesopotamia. What Ezekiel saw was a human-looking being shrouded in glitter and glare, sitting on a throne resting on a metal firmament inside a carriage. Recent studies on these biblical descriptions, such as the one from Joseph Blumrich, have concluded that Ezekiel's chariot was a kind of helicopter composed of a 4-axis cockpit, each equipped with rotating wings. But also, according to other Hebrew holy books, the origin of the temple could have an even more hidden and mysterious meaning. It can also be found in books such as the Quran, where they speak of the prophet by his name, known as Sulaiman, on the Islamic religion. In the Talmud, the construction of the temple was attributed to nothing more and nothing less than a demon named Asmodeo, which does not appear to be as evil as a creature as in other books, as it tells stories about his dealings with King Solomon. And Solomon apparently came to catch the demon and force him to build the Temple of Jerusalem. Let's not forget that according to the volume of the sacred law, no sound of hammer or axe or any tool of iron was heard as the structure arose. We must remember that the central purpose of this temple was to be the house of God and to house the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark was located in the Sanctum Sanctorum, the most sacred and holy on the temple. So talking about this artifact for me is an important task. According to Lon Milo Duquette, Freemason, Kabbalist, and head of the Ordo Templi Orientis, in his book Chicken Kabbalah, he makes an analysis of the name of God and the true nature of the Ark. In his book, he tells us how tradition informs us that every year, on the 10th day of Trisi, October 10, the high priest of Israel made 3 trips to the most holy place of the great temple and sprayed the Ark of the Covenant with blood. Around his leg was tied a long braided rope. The other end of the rope was held by friends of the high priest who were stationed outside of the most holy place. On his third visit to the most holy place, as a multitude of faithful stood outside of the temple and made a lot of noise, the high priest laid his hand directly on the ark and uttered the name of the god as the burning deity was revealed in the clouds and lightning above the lid. the chair of mercy. The rope was necessary because from time to time, at the climax of the supreme ceremony, the high priest exploded. After the spectacular departure of the poor man, the Saint of the Holies was filled with so much smoke and fire that it became too dangerous to enter, and the remains of the roasted priest had to be dragged from the chamber by a rope. Next year, a new high priest will have to give him another chance. We should remember that the belligerent people of the Old Testament were very superstitious. They took their gods into battle with them in the form of statues, animals, or other talismans objects such as meteors. If one side went on to win the battle, their god was considered superior to the god of the losing side. Very often, the first thing the defeated army would do after regrouping was to steal the winner's god and put him to work for them. This happened to the Ark of the Covenant. The Philistines stole the ark, but later returned it when they discovered it kept killing anyone who tried to move it. The ark was a lethal weapon, and the Israelites treated it as such. They kept it wrapped in fabric and leather, and the man who wore it had to wear special clothes and special shoes. The Great Temple of Solomon, according to Duquette, appears to have been built not so much as a house of worship, but as a prison for the dangerous and unpredictable ark. The Sanctum Sanctorum, where the ark rested, was built as a containment chamber, a perfect cube, 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 30 feet high. The floor, walls, and ceiling were lined with pure gold, with an estimated weight of 45,000 pounds, and riveted in place with golden nails. Sometimes the ark sparked and generated so much smoke that the temple priests were completely driven out of the building and could not fulfill their duties. You don't need to be a scientist to see that a wooden box with a double gold lining and closed with golden slings containing pots with mysterious substance, heavy plates and rods submerged in a liquid skillet was in all likelihood a gigantic and highly unstable battery. The two cherubims on the lid served as an anode and a cathode, and a spark of arc, God's burning presence, jumped madly between the tips of the two highly conductive golden wings. Let us remember that viable batteries have been found in Egyptian tombs of this period and before. Another research of the relationship of the temple and Freemasons shows that the oldest known document of Freemasonry lead us to their origins in Scotland. One of these documents is a manuscript that has an illustration called the Lambert Scroll, which is a copy of the Heavenly Jerusalem. From one of the scrolls Geoffrey St. Omer gave to Lambert in the chapel of our Virgin of St. Omer. This image is the tracing board that is used in one of the most solemn degrees of the Masonic ritual, and shows in many details the excavation on the Temple of Herodes in Jerusalem. Recent research has concluded that the famous Rosslyn Chapel located in Scotland, despite the general conception of the majority, was not a Christian chapel, since it was purposely made in seemingly incomplete manner and with a design that shows no similarities to a traditional chapel of this time. According to Christopher Knight and Robert Lomas, from outside Rosslyn is a stone representation of the celestial Jerusalem as described in the Lambert copy, with towers and curved central roofs inside the Rosslyn shrine. The design is a reconstruction of the ruins of the Temple of Jerusalem, decorated with Nazarene and Templar symbolism. In the northeast corner, they found a section of the wall carved with the towers of celestial Jerusalem, complete with Masonic compasses and the exact style shown on the Lambert Scroll. As mentioned, there is little historical data to sustain the existence of this temple, so I believe that its purpose is mainly symbolic, as well as much of what we found in the Torah and other holy books and orders. But however, I don't want to ignore their relationship and probable origin going back to Sumeria and a deity no less than Ninurta. Maybe and just maybe, the reason why King Solomon initiated and magical traditions is so important is because it hides a true meaning that describes the true nature of God, the origin of humans, and who knows, maybe the ark was an artifact used by humans to communicate with an actual deity living far in the heavens, and others like the Freemasons are guardians of this secret. Hope you like this video. Please subscribe, remember to like, follow me on Instagram, and share if you like this video. You can look at my other videos regarding other superheroes, and remember, do what you will is the whole of the law.